So for this video, I'm going to be going over some of our stuff that we sell on the site. I've gone over little bits and pieces of different things, but I wanted to do something more just covering everything that we have to offer at this point. Always adding new things, always working, trying to get new things developed, filling any needs that are out there, any things that we would like to exist that don't, or anything that someone brings to our attention that doesn't exist that we'd like to bring out. Of course, most of you have seen the demon eyes that we have. We have kind of fixed up the brackets a little bit, so they do now clip in, so they're a little more secure. We have several different versions of them. These are, well, those are both a 3-inch. I got 2.5 inch, 3-inch, and then like a flat clip. All of them snap right in, so you put the LED in, it will snap right in. Actually stays in pretty well. And you can just snap the new one right in like that, and they will stay in, won't fall out. So these do work pretty well. These are resin 3D printed, so they are really good with heat. And they hold up in general really well. So we use an ABS-like resin. Tested quite a few before we came across one that was very strong. It was not brittle. It holds up really well. So, and they are cured in a machine. So, pretty solid if you do need any kind of clips for the demon eyes. So that is the addressable demon eyes, which most of you guys have already seen on the videos. We have the 5mm LEDs. These right here. Now, with these, of course, we have a full video going over how to use them, how to set them up. But as well as that, we wanted to make it available to be able to run strips with them. Since a lot of taillights have kind of a combination of the two, we've done some builds ourselves where it'd be really nice to have strips that we're able to go with these. So we had some made. There wasn't really anything really good on the market. There wasn't a whole heck of a lot that was the right color order. For RGB strips, if you're not familiar, you have to make sure RGB or RGBW. Just because they're called RGBW does not mean that the color order is RGBW. In fact, most RGBW is GRBW. Most RGB is GRB if it's like WS or even SKs. I believe they're all GRB, I believe. I may be wrong on the WS. I'm not 100% sure on those. But we wanted to try to get something that would be RGB, because these are actually RGB color order for the LEDs. These are 5 volt. And the only thing we could find was an SK variant that is GRB, but it is 12 volts. So the only caveat to that is that you will have to run 12 volt and 5 volt to it. But these are actually quite bright. So there they are there. They are actually quite bright. About on the same level as like a SK68 12s. These are actually SK68 13s is the actual LED style. It is 1 LED per channel, so even though it's 12 volt, it's not going to be 3 per channel. It is actually 1 LED per channel. They get a little bit warm, but it's really not that bad, especially for a 12 volt strip. So far, they've held up pretty well. Everything that I've tested them on, and even the torture testing that I've done here, I haven't seen any issues with them. But these are sold by the meter, and you can find them on the site. And as I said, the main purpose of these, I mean, if you can use them for something else, absolutely go ahead. The main purpose is to be used with the 5mm LEDs that we sell, because they will work perfectly with that, as long as you understand that it is 12 volt to these and 5 volt to the 5mm. So make sure you put the proper voltage to each. Moving on, we have the side emitting. This one was really interesting to try to get put together. It's something I've been wanting for a while for myself, just because there's a lot of cases where you can't really put a standard strip, or it might be really tight space. And at the time, there wasn't really anything out there, especially not diffused and not in the RGBW category. So we went ahead and had these made up. It's kind of Imitated after the XK Glow style tubing, with the side emitting RGBW addressable. Now this is a short version. They come as 1 meter, and the tubing is an add-on option that you can add on. It's not standard, so I mean some people need them, some people don't. That's up to you. This is not as bright. It is a lower voltage or amperage than the traditional SKs. So traditional SKs, 6812s are 12. These are 8 amp or milliamp. So it is not as bright, especially being in the tube. The tube diffuses it really well, but sometimes with diffusion it also means it's not as bright. So by itself it's pretty bright, but in the tube not quite so much. But this is also very niche. I mean, if you can fit an LED in a place, you really shouldn't be, or a 50/50 LED, like a flat style rather than a side emitting, you really should not be using these. These are more of just an option if there's nothing else that's going to work in your situation. So, you know, I do have some cars where I add C lights or something like that. These work really well for that, and nothing else will work. That's a key important factor of this. This is nothing amazing. It's not nearly as bright as some of the other stuff that we're selling, but it is very unique in that it can do things that nothing else can. Case in point, I could roll that right up like that. No issues at all. It'll take it. It'll keep working. Not a problem. There's really nothing else on the market that's RGBW in a GRBW color order. So these will work with SK 6812s as far as the color order goes, and as well as being 5 volt. So they will work plug and play with anything that is a 5 volt GRBW color order item. So as well as they will work with the demonized, and they will work with the rigid strips as well. Just keep in mind, once again, 5 volt versus 12 volt voltage. You want to make sure that you put the proper voltage to the proper device. Up next is our new diffused rigid SK strips. These are 8 mil wide. They come in 12-inch or 24-inch lengths. They are cuttable. There's markings on the back of the strip. You can actually also see a dark line on the side of the strip as to where to cut. It is cuttable every 3 LEDs, so they can be cut down to smaller sizes. I recommend using like wire cutters or something like that. It works really well to cut these, and it does actually make a clean cut with the diffusion. It is a similar milky white 10K diffusion as what we have with our hex halos, and hopefully in the future here our regular halos will have that same color diffusion. And it you know, it's just one more thing that wasn't really out there that we wanted to try to get on the market for the addressable side. So far they've held it pretty good. This is still pretty new, but I mean, it's an SK, it's a strip. It's a rigid strip, so heat wise it does not get very hot at all. Right now it's cold, so I imagine these will last quite a while. They are semi-flexible, semi-rigid. You're not going to get a whole lot of flex out of them. Think of them somewhat like a profile strip, RGBs or the switchbacks. Maybe slightly less flexible, but pretty close to that. They are adhesive line 3M tape on the back, so easy application. They do come with a plug. There is a contact points on the back for output, as well as if you cut them, say you only need 2 6-inch strips for your particular project, you can cut this in half. You get 2 6-inch. You can put your input here, and if you need to, you can put 2 outputs as well. As I said, these do come in both 12-inch and a 24-inch size, so depending on your needs, they should hopefully be long enough for whatever you're doing. Up next is our flexible strips. So this is something that we just recently got in. There were some other brands that we were using in the past, but just figured, you know, we go ahead and try to get everything under our main manufacturer, try to get them making everything, since so far they've just been nailing it, knocking it out of the park. Everything's been really reliable for the most part. So these are 1 meter strips as well. They're 144 LEDs per meter. They are 8 millimeters wide. They are cuttable every 3 LEDs. They have a 1 meter long input lead. There is no output lead soldered, but there are solder pads to add the outputs. As you can see on the back. So probably something a little more common. Most of you guys are probably already using something, but you know, one-stop shop. If you want to try to get addressable stuff, we'll try to have as much on hand as we can, so hopefully you can get it all in one shipment from one location. But I know I'll be using a hell of a lot of these. Up next is our new LED pods. We have two different versions. This is the single LED pod. This is going to be really good for like through holes, like on the front of a light. Sometimes you have like little LED holes on the front and you want to put something in. A lot of people have been wanting to use the 5mm for that, and that'll work, but it's RGB. So if you're using headlights, RGBW is ideal. They don't really have anything that's like a solid bulb like the RGBs. So we had these made. These are made using the same UCS 2904. So even though they look similar to the SK6812s that are all over the internet and Amazon and all that, these are actually a UCS chipset in them, same as our rigid. They are 5V because it's only a single LED for the one controller chip on the back. That's one of the reasons why they are a little bit more money, because the controller costs more than the LEDs, and being that it's one controller for each LED, they do run a little bit more. But you know, if you're only using this on through holes and a light, you know, you probably only have maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 of them on the front of a light anyways, so figure you won't really be using them that much. They do come with a 3-inch wire going between each one, and they come as a set of 25. As far as the brightness goes, it's the exact same setup as what our rigid strips are, so they are quite bright. They are definitely a touch above the SKs, but more important than that, I'm gonna set this up here for just a second. So more important than that, these are 5V, just like SK. They are 5V, so that is a benefit. GRBW 5V. They are the USC or UCS 2904. So you can use these with the SKs directly without having to worry about any power injection. You can also use these with the rigid strips and the demonized, but keep in mind, once again, the voltage, you have to make sure you get the proper voltage to each. So these are warranted at 5V. But I'm going to show you this as a really good example of why UCS is just so much better than SK and why it costs more. It's not just the brightness. It is a hair brighter. With diffusion, you will see it. It is a little bit brighter, but this is what really blows it away. So I'm at 5V, cranking up, 8V, we're at 9V, 12V, 13V, 15V, no problem. Even at 16 volts. Now, in a car, long term, you know, this probably ain't great for it. You're probably going to start creating a lot of heat because that IC controller is converting that higher voltage and protecting the LED from burning out. But I have no inverter on here. This is straight 16 volts, straight to a 5V setup. No flicker, no issues. I take it right back down to 5V, got no problems. Voltage spikes are one of the leading issues that causes problems with SKs. Even with an inverter and things like that, you can still have them. Dips, spikes, raises, stuff like that. It's not something we enjoy, but you know, it is one of the reasons why the addressable have so many issues. So that's one of the things that I love about the UCS. You know, the rigid strip, they do run 12V, but if you were to overspike to 20, I don't think you'd have a problem, especially if it's just short term. It happens for a couple seconds. I have yet to see a single UCS device actually go out. They seem to hold up really well. So far, the only issues we've had with the demonized seem to be the solder points, and that is something that will be addressed at some point. I'm working with my manufacturer to try to move the creation of those over to them. Right now, I'm using another third manufacturer for those, but definitely something we are working on there. But other than that, I haven't had any issues, and even the ones that have been sent back to me so far, I've been able to fix them just by cleaning up some of the soldering and rerunning the wires. But yeah, so these are available on the site right now. They do have inputs and outputs on the side. Once again, these are 5 volts, but as you can see, they're very robust. They will take some voltage abuse, some things like that. You know, don't run them 12 volt nonstop and expect them to work forever. But I have yet to be able to burn them out running 12 volt, 15, even 16. I ran 15 volts for a while. They got really hot, so that was the biggest thing. I think if anything, they would probably get to the point where they start melting the wires before they would mess up the LEDs at 12 volt. At 5 volts, nothing all day, no problems. 5 of them are like 6 volts now. This is more than any inverter's going to push it. No problems. You turn them up to 8, 7, 10 volts, it's still not bad. I could even touch them at 15 and it wasn't killing me, but eventually it would start to burn a little bit. So they do get hot if you're running 3 times the voltage of what they're rated for, but still pretty impressive that they can take that much voltage and be okay. Up next we have our 12 volt pods. So these are a little bigger, kind of a different purpose to them. But the cool thing about these is that they are encased in a plastic housing. They do have 2 screw holes on them, so they could be mounted to different locations depending on the purpose that you use them for. They have an optical lens on each LED that helps to direct the light outward. So I would think currently what I'm thinking the best option for these is to use them as backlighting for like truck lights, or something like a big C light channel where you could almost put like 2 strips. Something like this would actually be able to project the light a little bit better. It is using the UCS 2904 in a 3 LED pattern, so it is very similar to our rigid strips in that manner. There are also inputs and outputs. These are made similarly to our Demon Eyes, where we have the 12 volt leads separated from the plugs, and the 5 volt actually passes through. So you could plug them directly up to 5 volt or 12 volt, but you will have to run your 12 volt separately to the wires on these to make them power up. In addition to that, I did go ahead and make a Demon Eye bracket. Now these could be used as Demon Eyes. I wasn't overly impressed with the output on them. I would put it on par with like a profile Demon Eye, not quite Meson level, definitely not up to what the addressable Demon Eyes that we're selling right now do. But you know, these are pretty cool because they have the clips on the side, so they actually snap right in. So I created this little Demon Eye bracket here, and it just snaps right in like that. It's got some adjustability if you need to move it around, and it'll screw right in. This one is a 3-inch bracket size. It's larger, so that's another thing. Like the normal Demon Eyes are just so much smaller that they can fit in a lot more places. So like our main LED projector that we have on the site right now, which we plan on getting more of those, but that one, this works pretty well. This does not fit, so that's something to consider. But this one has a driver, this one does not, so yeah, it kind of depends what you kind of go. These are a heck of a lot cheaper, just given what they are and how much is involved in actually making them. These are pretty beefy at 1 amp load on these. They're pretty beefy, versus these are a lot lower at 17 milliamps going to that. So you know, a lot less light, but it is very directional. I think that seems to be the really big thing with these. They're very good with direction. So depending on your circumstance, it might be worth picking up a couple of them. I do sell them by 5, and that's mainly just to try to keep the shipping rate free. If you're placing a larger order and you want to throw a couple of these in, let me know, and I can give you an individual pricing on them. But as far as just selling them on the site, if I was just selling these as singles, I'd be losing money if anybody had bought singles. So I can't do that, unfortunately. But if you want to buy a smaller quantity, please just let me know. I can do that with any other orders that you might be placing. So now that you've seen some of our more popular options on the site for addressable, we also do have some options for switchback, which I'll go ahead and show you now. These are our switchback halos. They are diffused. This uses the same coating that is on our RGBW SK strips, as well as our hex halos. They come with a driver. It's actually pretty small driver, and 3 inputs as well. There is a ground. There is the turn signal and your basic DRL input. They are labeled as well so that you know which is which. And I mean, all in all, they're just very bright. Profile have had some issues in the past with us. One of the things I don't like about Profile is actually their coating. Their coating does have a little bit of a yellowish hue to it. If you look really close, you'll see. If you want to get really experimentative, like I have, you can actually remove the coating from their halos and kind of see. It's not their LEDs, it's their coating. And that's something that, you know, I kind of wanted to try to improve on at some point. I ended up finding a company that was able to do that. So they created these, and it's extremely well. You cannot see the LEDs on these. Can't do it. In person, on camera, it just, you can't see it. As well as, oh, I did the wrong one. Turn signal function as well. You can kind of see the LEDs on a turn signal function, but it is better diffused than what the profiles are. Pretty much on par to what Diode is selling. They are a little bit thicker. I would say that's the biggest drawback to these versus Diode. They do have adhesive backing though. If you remove that, it will make them a little bit thinner. That's, you know, kind of preference on how you want to mount them and what your goals are with them. But ultimately it's that white that really just sets them apart. Very bright, very vivid white that transfers very well. These come in 80 mil and 110 currently is what we're offering. Just kind of as a comparison, here's the 110s. So standard sizes that we use the most, that's what I'm carrying right now. If somebody has a need for a different size, I might consider trying to pick up a couple more depending on how well these do. Currently I'm using them a good bit. I've sold a couple, but you know, I haven't really been putting them out there very much, but I'll go ahead and post them now. As well as the halos, we do have strips as well. These are sequential strips. So they have the diffusion, the same diffusion as the halos, so they will work very well if they are exposed. As well as we do have, for a little bit less money, the non-diffused. So like the most common case for me with these would be like the Foresters, would do like the 06s. These work really well for that top bar. They're cheap enough, they look great, and the number one thing about these that I love is they are 3-wire. Best example would be the Profile, which is what I used to use. They actually have 4 wires where you have to run a constant power. That's a little bit of a pain in the butt. You know, I mean, do you really want to have to tell them to run a power wire just so you can get a sequential strip to work right? Or would you rather ship it to them and they can do plug and play and everything works right out of the box? That's the beauty of these. There's a ground, turn signal, and DRL. Better. Just as bright as the halos, just as beautiful as a white as the halos. The manufacturer of these actually call them a 10K white. I think it's on par with like a 6500, but it's a very pure white, as well as the turn signals. We are working on getting these sequential strips to be cuttable. Hoping to have that in January, but there will be markings on the back where you can actually cut the strips. You would be able to solder on wires, and maybe you could take a 12-inch strip and turn it into 2 6s, or 4 3s, 3 4s, whatever you're going for. So that will be something really cool that we hope to be offering here soon, that it might make a build a little bit nicer depending on what you're doing. So these are on the site. They come both diffused and non-diffused. It's effectively the exact same strip. The non-diffused are much more flexible without the coating, so keep that in mind too. If you don't need the coating, I really wouldn't get the coating. If you're going to have it exposed, the coating is great. Go for it. But otherwise, these work just as well. It's just a little bit less money, and they are quite a bit more flexible. So keep that in mind. Last up on the list of things that I wanted to go over is currently the only LED projector we're offering on the site. We will be offering a 3-inch here very soon. The 3-inch, we've actually tested it. It is on par with the Morimoto MLED as far as your hotspot goes, and it actually has a better spread of light. So at about 8 feet to the right or left, you'll actually have more output with that. So that one will be coming on the site, so definitely keep an eye out for it. It's called the H4 or the H7. This is the one that we're offering currently. This is a 2.5-inch LED projector. It's just very small, very compact. It fits in a lot of small places, and most of the time I can put this in a headlight, put the factory caps back on it, even a reflector headlight, and not have any issues. It comes with this driver here, so there's not a whole lot to it. You've got your high beam, power and ground, and your low beam, power and ground. As far as output goes on this, it's about on par with HIDs like Acme and even the Morimoto to some extent, depending on what projector it's in. Like a Morimoto and a Mini H1, Morimoto HIDs and a Mini H1, it's about on the level of these. It is far better output than we were seeing with the 2 strokes that we were using way back when. Ever since we switched to these, I never even looked back. But now with the H4s and stuff, I might start putting them in more things. I'll try to cover those at a later date. But those will be coming up on the site at some point. These are currently on the site for sale. We do offer etching service on these as well if you do decide that you want to get a set. And I do have demon eye brackets to allow the our addressable demon eyes to fit in these. I don't have brackets for any other demon eyes because unfortunately I just don't use other demon eyes at this point. But our addressable demon eyes, they will fit in here using the brackets that we have on the site. I think I have them listed on the site. If not, let me know. I will try to get them on there. So that's the gist of what I have to cover on some of our newer stuff, newer products that we've been offering. We do have other things like butyl on the site. We've got breather patches. We have several different quick connects that we use on ours, similar to like this barrel style connections. A whole lot of things. It's kind of hard to go over all of them. The pictures on most of those can usually explain it pretty well. But if you do have any questions about anything that we have on the site, or if you're looking for something and it's not on the site, hit me up. Maybe I have it and it's just not on the site. Maybe it's something I didn't really know people even wanted. I've got, hyper flash resistors and stuff like that. I got tons of stuff. So definitely check out the site, see if there's anything on there that you have questions about. Just hit me up. Check out the bulbs and parts section, and within that you'll see the addressable, the non-addressable, as well as the projectors and building materials. And those are the main 4 sections for builders that we have set to try to help, you know, hopefully cover most of what we use and make it available so that you can use it as well. I also do have the Amazon page where things that maybe it's not quite worth me stocking, but I use them. You can actually go on there. You can see some of the stuff that I use, some of the stuff I use in videos as well. You know, that way you can get a hold of it if that's something you want. Things like this, I do make these. I don't put them on the site, but I've had a couple of people ask me about them. I'm like, this one's dusty as heck, but it's just a basic switch box. This one here plugs into an inverter. I make them larger where they actually, this one here, this one actually has an inverter built in. It's got a plug on the back for 12 volt, just uses a basic computer power supply plug, and there's an on-off switch so I can actually control it. I use this for testing headlight projection outputs, stuff like that if I'm actually leaving the workshop to go do stuff. It's got switches for each, as well as a flasher relay here. You can turn this up and down to make it flash faster and slower. And that just gives you a lot of options. So this is like an old one that I made a long time ago that I've been using for years. This one here is a smaller one, but you got to have a power supply to make it work. So little things like that. I don't have them on the site, like I said. I don't sell a whole lot of them. I don't really push them. But if it's something that you guys like, that, you know, you'd be interested in trying to buy one or something, let me know. They're usually not too bad. I think the big ones are like 150 built, and something small like that might be like $50. It's not bad. But, you know, stuff like that, if there's anything that I can do to help you guys, it's definitely worthwhile. Maybe at some point I'll do a tutorial on how to make those boxes, because they're really not terrible, especially if you're pretty good with electrical. They're not too bad to make. I think that's about it. I didn't want to go too crazy on stuff here, but that's the gist of what I got.